Good morning and welcome to Millionaire Brand Creation. I'm your host, Michael Banovac, producer Matthew Culhane, and we have a very special guest, an impromptu guest that wanted to come on actually yesterday, and I had to convince him because he has a great story, I think, to share with the audience. Our guest today is Dennis Colwell. He is a Massachusetts-based architect, but his firm is based, I believe, in over 25, 26 states across the United States. And he's done a lot of amazing work. And I just wanted to have him on today to kind of explain his story, explain his successes, and how those in the real estate business may want to use him in the future and or learn from what he's done with his business and maybe implement it into your own. So without further ado, welcome, Dennis. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing, Michael? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on in such short notice. Let's go back in time and tell us a little bit about your childhood. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Foxborough, Massachusetts. So everyone kind of knows Foxborough for the Patriots, and I lived probably about a mile from the stadium. So that was always a big part of life, a little bit down there in your identity. I'm one of six kids, so kind of like the Brady Bunch. I'm able to get along with everybody, but also get that older child syndrome and everything as well. So yeah.
And what about your childhood got you into that entrepreneurial spirit? Because I know based on our conversation yesterday, you were talking about, your involvement with, different prominent families within the state of Massachusetts and beyond. And
Yeah.
then how did you get that zest to want to create your own business?
So yes, that's interesting. I feel so I'm probably the first of my family that's really kind of jumped in both feet into the water and become an entrepreneur. And my father dabbled in it a bit. Funny story with him. He's still doing it now today. He does window treatment, so it's blinds by Dennis Colwell. I'm a junior, and my son's a third. So there's a lot of Dennises running around Foxborough right now. But my father had ran his own business as well. We saw some of the good parts and the bad parts of that. I know he struggled a bit, and he'd be the first to tell you that he made some mistakes. Um, I was younger, so I'm not sure how much I learned or didn't learn, but I definitely
Right.
understood doing that. My entrepreneurial spirit or kind of my drive or passion was probably driven at a little bit of a later age when I was coming out of college and seeing what my first jobs looked like as a registered architect or as an architectural draftsman designer entry level. Um,
And how did that catapult you into thinking maybe I want to do this for myself one day?
um, so I think the question means like, how did I become my own boss or start in the business? So I graduated in 2006 from architectural school, Wentworth Institute of Technology. It's a great school in Boston. They're jokingly call it the Wentworth Mafia because you always know or someone's been there. There's an uncle going there. Was a cousin or a niece that graduated from there, and it's a great college for easy to get in, tough to get out. They really work you hard.
Mm.
So I came out in 2006. Didn't understand at that point. I mean, I was a kid. I just went to school. So when you finish and graduate college, you've got a degree now. So you've earned and you now feel, since I have a degree, I deserve a job. So
Right.
interviewed, and it's a funny feeling, but it's true, but it's not true at the same time. So I interviewed at a larger firm in Boston, and then I interviewed at a smaller firm a little bit outside of Boston. Me being not really a city kid, like I enjoyed being in the city, but I didn't enjoy living there. I'm more of I need a little bit of grass and some space.
Hmm.
I ended up opting for the smaller firm. I felt like I get to do a little more, learn a little more, and then also I wasn't commuting into the city. I was kind of going the opposite direction, so that was great for me. That being said, with it being smaller, little did I know the economy around us was kind of crumbling a bit, especially
Mm.
architecturally and planning and etc. At that place, I kind of watched, and it was very small. It was three of us working there, and there was another office in Florida. And the owner, who was in Florida at the time, kind of had hands off, and they ran the business itself in Norwell. But what was happening was I'd see we get projects, and we really weren't going out and getting new projects. So I would work on the project at hand that they had, we kind of finish that up, and then we'd be like, "What's next?"
Right.
Um, and I think as a business owner, I think it's easy. Like you get excited, right? You get a new project. That's excellent. We've got work, and everybody kind of high fives, and you see the contract come in. You get excited. I think what I saw was yeah, we've got work right now, but what does the future look like? And I learned
Mm.
everything you do today, I really believe pays off in 6 months. And I think I mentioned it to you the other day. You know, what you do today, January, what is today? I don't even know. Is it the 4th or
January 4th.
so? June 4th, what we're doing today, I really feel will be paid off around then. And that's really been my mantra. So even when we're at the busiest or et cetera, and you really feel slammed, that's when you really need to keep putting your head down and keep getting new work and keep driving and kind of getting, you know, new avenues, meeting new people. It's when you get complacent or you get you know, kind of comfortable. That's when you get, you know, bit a little bit, I found. So what I would find, back to the story, is, you know, eventually the business folded. I walked out of there with, you know, a check that they said, don't bounce, you know, don't cash that check. It's going to bounce. And I went into underemployment. I was, you know, being one of six, and my dad is probably the hardest worker you're ever going to meet. I always joke with him. He doesn't always work smarter. He always worked harder. But
Right.
we worked on that too. But I knew that I had to work. So at that point, I played tennis in college. I was 4 years captain. I loved the sport. And then I also was you know, got out. Sorry, excuse me. So I took that skill. I started a little bit of a thing called tennisdentist.net, and I was given lessons.
Mm.
I was underemployed, like I said, and I was getting part-time consulting work, working for other architects who needed, you know, kind of pop-up projects here and there. And then also I was bartending and substitute teaching. So I'd basically go 3 days, get really sick from substitute teaching with the kids, be tired from the bartending, and I was just in this vicious loop. But I knew I had to kind of get my licensure. And in architecture, you can graduate from college and you have your architectural design, you know, bachelor or master's or what have you. But we've also got an IDP program that you have to go through. So in amongst all that, I'm underemployed, but I'm working, and I'm watching, you know, new architects that I'm working with kind of do the same thing. Get a project, squander it, sit on it, and at the end of it go, well, we don't have any more work for you. So you can kind of see the theme here in my industry, or really some of the other industries too, when you get comfortable. Eventually, I earned enough credits and hours so I could sit for my exams. I took those in late 2009. I started, finished them in 2000 October or something, and got registered, and was at the time I was the youngest registered architect in the country. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
So you know, and most of my friends or colleagues at that point were not registered. They were working in the industry, or a lot of them had dropped out. So for me at that point, I'd seen enough. You know, I think in general, I didn't have enough practical experience because I really didn't have mentors in the architectural
Hmm.
practice. It was such a brief amount of time before I was registered and ready to go. But I went out, I hung a shingle, as they say, and started the business in 2010. But I would meet with people in the back of my pickup truck. I had a black Ford F-150. It was rusting, it was falling apart, but I was also in a, you know, apartment, and I had a plotter and a printer in one room, and my computer and desk in the other room, and a bed in the last space. And that was kind of how I ran my quote unquote office. It was just me. My first project, I'll be honest, I didn't know how to price projects because I wasn't involved in it, right? So
Right, right.
I had rent. So if you guess what I charged for the first project, it was a day spot. I remember it being a pretty sizable day spot. Now it had to be about 5,000 or 6,000 square feet. It was a good size one, and I charged what I had to make rent for that month because I didn't know how to price it. Looking back, holy crap! But here we are now. So uh, yeah, so I would meet with people. I'd take the pickup truck, meet with people, flip the thing down the back of the bed. And we'd look at the drawings and redline and mark them up, or I'd go to their house or their office, or I'd do networking at a Panera Bread cafe or whatever worked. So, but I was excited. I was exuberant. I don't think I even realized how excited I was about it at the time. And I started, you know, kind of naturally networking and trying to help other people, and that led to more stuff, more business back to my way. So I think
You hit
that's
you
what it
hit you,
came
you
from.
hit on an interesting topic, which I think is important because I know a lot of people listening in are in the real estate space, and enthusiasm, right?
Mhm.
Knowledge it follows enthusiasm, right? And the more that we can help each other and educate one another on things that we are not proficient in ourselves, the
Hmm.
more business comes our way. How did you transition from the back of the F-150 into 26 states?
Yeah, that's my first response would be really great staff, but my journey is interesting. I think this is the kind of the fun part of the piece. So I did move from that apartment. The lease came up, and I found a single family, like a little ranch, one level, 1,100 square feet, 3 bedrooms. Really, the last bedroom was not a bedroom. I turned that into my office, and I had a
Mm.
place to sleep, and then I had a kitchen and a dining and a living room. I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Boiler Room, but I
Oh
have a
yeah.
hey, this is like, I don't want to. He was a contractor, so he said this was like blank boiler room. What's going on in here? And started laughing. So we would set up in the middle of the living room and the kitchen, and we would flip folding tables out. We had this long, winding, you know, cables that we would plug into the back of the computers. And I started off like that. I hired my first staff January 2012, first one ever. And I was really nervous. I remember telling him, I don't know if I'm going to have enough work for you. It's only just been me. I'll promise you I can give you 35 hours of work and we can start from there. He started to do work for me, this young man, and I realized, geez, I could go out and start meet people and do more of the stuff that I was naturally good at or inherently knew was important to the business. Within a week, I said, hey, do you have any other friends from school? It was just an internship. And he goes, yeah, I do, actually. He's looking for it, and he lives right on the corner. I had my second employee. A month later, I had my third. A few months later, I had a fourth and a fifth and a sixth, and it just kind of
Wow.
grew. Eventually, my now wife, I believe she was either girlfriend or fiance, girlfriend at the time, not fiance, was living there, and she had probably had enough of this as well, and she would come through doing the laundry, or be complaining that we were being loud. So we realized that this wasn't going to work forever, but it was a really humble kind of starting block. And to be honest, there's one person from my staff who is still from that time, and he's one of my cherished staff, and we always look back on it and we can say we were there, we did this, and this is how we started. After that, we ended up buying a house in a couple towns over, and it was a raised ranch. So we went from the ranch to the raised ranch, which is really exciting. We jokingly called it a mullet. We had living up top, business in the back, because it was stacked, first floor, lower level, and our office was in the basement. So we never really got out of the house at that point, but then we were able to expand. We had 900 square feet to ourselves in the basement to do what we wanted to do, and we started
Mm.
growing, meeting clients. It was cramped, sometimes embarrassing because the toilet was right next to the what we called kind of the meeting room, conference room. Um, but we had a nice little fireplace in the basement, and we made do, and everybody kind of worked hard. It was really kind of a cool experience, very close. From there, we ended up finally moving into big boy land and leasing an office, and I had also purchased office condo that we were planning to move into and build out. From there on out, we've now in a nice 2,600 square foot, state of the art, beautiful office with beautiful conferencing, lighting, flooring, like all the stuff that you'd expect when you walk into an architectural studio. But I do think remembering where I came from and kind of remembering those roots, as cheesy as it sounds, really drive me, because I do wake up and every morning. Maybe this is a negative way to look at things, but I wake up unemployed each morning and I need to go out and find something new. And that's really driven me, as well as obviously my staff, my family. I got 2 little kids. So those are all really motivators in life as well.
It's almost a blessing and a curse. And maybe you can kind of touch on this because I know for me, every morning I wake up and I feel completely broke and destitute. And I don't know why that is, but I think that's almost because where you once were. And with a few turns of the table not going your way, in theory, you could easily go back there. You know what I mean? And so, how do
Mhm.
you take that humility, kind of ingest it into your staff, and make sure that they understand, like, hey, we're here today. That doesn't mean we're going to be here tomorrow. And we need to work every single day to continue to expand or grow, or, continue to create a business model that's sustainable. How do you institute that into the people that work with you?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's something that everybody struggled with, because having a culture of we and us versus you and I is always the difficulty, right? Um, I think on our end, we really try to actually take care of and make sure on the personal end of things. If we just skip the business part, they come in. All I ask is an honest works week, and I'm not going to bug you. The work life balance thing is important to us. When I hire people and when they're working with me, you could probably interview and ask any of them right now. The things that we've done for them personally, because we love them and we care for them, are really important. And I think that helps show, that we are going to take care of them. Stuff pops up, family, crisis, something they needed, a loan or money or a car or whatever it may be. We've always stepped up and taken care of those folks that work with us, because they are the ones that keep the business going. I do obviously have meetings with them. We talk about goals, initiatives, and we're pretty open. We talk about how the business is doing, and the understanding that, yeah, you know what, we're busy. We've got work up to our ears, but I will gladly tell them. I said, hey, we've got to rally around, and we've got to keep on staying busy. Otherwise, all the work that you do is we make money and then we pay you. So I think that's pretty easy to grasp. It brings me back a little bit to pre-COVID days, right? Like right before it, right when it was kind of kicking on. I remember meeting with my team, and we didn't know at the time. It turned out to be the best year ever for architecture, because everybody planned. Like, people were stuck in their house.
Mm-hmm.
Offices took care of stuff they weren't going to take care of because they put it off because people were in there. They started doing renovations. We had people in their house that said, well, the wife's bugging me. We got to do this thing that we were talking about doing. So it was crazy busy. But at the beginning, we had no idea. And I remember sitting down. I don't really write notes too much. Unfortunately, my wife will tell you I'm a bit of a talker, so I never really struggled with that piece of it, for better or worse. I don't know if I'm 100% full of it, but we'll see. But I did write down some notes, and at that time, since we didn't know what the future bring and we didn't know what was going on, I said, guys, I look back at the kind of past, and I said, we're prepared for this. I've started this in X, and I went through that whole story, and we kind of chatted a bit about where we came from. And I said, for better or worse, the analogy I used, or whatever it's called, symbolism, I said, we're going to be like cockroaches. Now, a lot of people
Mm.
don't like cockroaches, and I understand they're gross, they're nasty, but they're going to survive everything. And I had a whole bunch of stats on what they can survive and how they can get through. And I said, guys, the whole team, I said, we're going to be like cockroaches. I promise to you guys, I'm going to keep you on. No one's getting laid off. I don't care what happens. I've saved. I've made sure the business is stable, and we've been ready for this. We've been ready for the bad times. As sick as that sounds, I think I told you the other day, I'm ready for the bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that helps too, because I think most people want to feel a little bit secure and want to feel appreciated. And I hope we can do both of those. And that's kind of how I've tried to maintain and be respectful and caring and thoughtful to my actual staff as well, beyond just the work part.
Well, I think you hit on an interesting perspective, because I think anyone that's lived through, a recession, right, on a large level, where you're not just taking care of yourself, but you have staff or employees or all these different things, you really understand the runway, right? You understand, okay, what's my liquidity? What do I have to pay? What needs to get paid today? What can be pushed out, etc. And
Mhm.
a lot of people listening in either are, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, or investorpreneurs. And I think it's important to kind of establish that, because at a young age, we're all kind of solopreneurs, like you were, right? Getting out of your college, going out, wanting to start a business. Many people have that dream. But it's hard to go from a solopreneur to an entrepreneur, to where now you have responsibilities, right? You have other people that rely on you. You have to go procure business, which I want to ask you on how you go about doing that, because a lot of real estate agents fail at that aspect because they don't have a system in place, or they don't have the network in place. And then lastly, once you have some means, on top of survival, how do you invest wisely to create reoccurring revenue for you and your team and your family to where you don't have to exchange time for money. So the first question I have for you is, how do you go about procuring business in a reoccurring way, in an elegant way, to kind of attract the highest level of possible clientele you can?
All right. So, um, when we first met, and we met yesterday briefly, and I actually,
Yeah, exactly.
oh, this is great. Birds of a feather, kind of like-minded. But one of the biggest things I could give for a suggestion, this doesn't necessarily have any specific, this is what you need to do, this is the spreadsheet you need, or this is the place you got to go. But what I've always done and what I watched you guys do, and I started chuckling, was ask questions, be interested,
Mm,
stop looking out for yourself, look out for the other person you're talking to. It should be a conversation where you're looking to assist and help someone you're meeting. Everybody you meet's an opportunity, and I will say that till the day I die. You just don't know who you're going to meet. And I talk to everybody. I'll talk to someone on an elevator, someone at the who's waiting on the table, someone who's got $1 billion. It doesn't really matter, but everybody's an open opportunity. And I think the thing that a lot of us get caught up on is, how am I going to make money, or how am I going to bring in business for myself? What most people don't do is they don't listen for those key kind of words or those triggers. Like when you were talking to me and I was talking to you, we were asking each other's questions, but I could tell we were both listening for, what are your needs? How can I help you? What is
hmm
it looking to do? And I think a lot of people miss that piece. So again, it goes back to the 6 months. I meet someone today and I talk to them and I listen. I put it in the back of my head. I don't have the best memory on certain things, but I do have a great memory about what people do, what their key kind of things they're looking for. And you know what? It's not always give me work, right? Like I could meet a real estate agent or a broker who says, I'm really looking for some key agents to add to my team. It could be, I'm looking for an introduction for a really good accountant. So all these things foster and build kind of goodwill, because what you'll want, just like anything else in life, you want to be front of mind. So in my world, I try to make myself that architect that's front of mind to people. Um, I always joke, I'm not the brightest person in the room. I'm kind of a dummy. I've got a great staff, but I think people remember me and generally like me or like to work with me, and that's not meant egotistically in any way. But you work with people you like, you work with people who take care of you, and in order to build those relationships, it's got to be a two-way street. And I think a lot of, no offense, a lot of even real estate people I've met are very much one way. They're not listening. They're having a conversation with themselves, and it's really tough. And I think everybody's felt that at some point, that kind of turn off moment where you go, man, this guy's just, he's just waiting for me to stop talking, or this lady's just waiting so I can take a drink of water so she can talk some more. Like they're not listening. So I think turning the ears on is really, really important. It's a basic thing that you can do, and I think that'll grow most of your business as well.
That's a really good point. One of the acronyms that I teach a lot of my clients, especially in the dating space and in the business space, is that acronym called SCC, right? And that acronym stands for story, right? So many people can't cultivate their story in an interesting, fun, interactive way in 10 or 15 seconds, right? And we
Yep.
truncated this in probably 30 minutes with one another yesterday, right? The
Yeah.
second acronym is commonality, right? You have a unique timepiece that you were wearing that I recognized instantly, as did I. Instantly, we had that in common, right?
Yeah.
So, what that kind of does, and for those listening in, is something as simple as that builds rapport quickly, because what it does is it showcases to the other person without verbalizing it, okay, this person's like me in some way. And I
Yeah.
think that's really important as you procure your clients, especially on the high end, is they want to know that you understand the way that they think. Wouldn't you agree?
I would, yeah, and I think that moment of I see you and I recognize you and I share common interests. And to be honest, I think a lot of the things that are important is being human. I think we're so formal sometimes and so scared. Like I will say silly stuff or things that are a little bit off color, not mean or anything, but just to test to see. And I've met more people. Just I remember I met a really large client. I looked at him at a Christmas party. I'd never met him in my life, and I said, "That's a beautiful sweater." And he looked at me and he goes, and it was a funny sweater. It was great. and we started chatting, and it turned into a gigantic project, and we did a lot of work, casino based project that, I had no business being there, but he enjoyed talking to me. We started talking about golf and life and different things like that and family. And so I really think, don't be afraid to just kind of say a little bit, say something that's, speak your mind a little. Obviously be careful to a point, but that stuff's fun. I think people are looking for that. And, when you're in those big group settings, I think, you get to these big networking events, right? We're going to go network. I'm going to go to this event. I got invited, and it's Thursday afternoon, and we're going to have drinks. I see a lot of people just standing around because they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
My biggest thing is, if you know what to do, say something ridiculous. Say, I compliment something. Talk about something that has nothing to do with work, because people are interested in talking about that too. We all want to get to know each other a little bit. And again, it goes back to, I like to work with people I have fun with. I think
You do
Jen,
business. You
have a
do
drink.
business with people you like, right? And
Yeah.
without even knowing it, you hit on the third part. So first story, second is commonality, third is conversion. And
Mhm.
when they hear that conversion, that word, they don't like it, right? Oh, that's sleazy salesman's trying to sell me something, right? But what people don't realize is there's different stages of conversion. And
Right.
the whole point of that is you want to convert a friendship, an authentic connection, a possible work, camaraderie, but you just don't know when that will come together.
Patience.
And I think a lot of people take that a mistake, or they're trying to truncate that experience to such a tight time frame that they come across as too desperate or too in need, if that makes sense. Can you touch upon that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, person to person, I think that's great. And then the other part too is in business, sometimes underselling or unselling yourself is perfectly acceptable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Of long-term clients, by not getting the short-term gain, walking into a space and going, guys, you know what? I make money by designing, renovating, helping you imagine your space, but this isn't going to make any sense. This timeline wise or money wise or whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. I think you need to speak to you need to speak to somebody at EXP, and you need to sell this place and you need to move
Right.
on. And guess what? I just created an opportunity for myself to kind of talk to someone else who, someone that's in the front of my mind, back of my mind. Um, another fellow professional. I say, speak to this person. I think they're great at what they do. They're like us, which is a word I use a lot. I know that sounds funny.
Mm-hmm.
Guys are like us. They're one of us. So you want people to not feel pressured. You want people to know that you're with someone trusted. So I think, I think sometimes, like you said, that I think the word truncated you used, I think that it almost comes across as aggressive or pushy, and it doesn't.
Correct.
And it's easy to say patience when you got a bill coming up and you got to make that bill, or you got to pay this thing. But I think a lot of that goes back to savings, and one of the key parts of my business is, I always say, you've got to save. You got to save, and the reason for it is you can say no to that bad project. You can, in good conscience, talk to someone and say, this is a bad idea. You shouldn't do this, and we should reconnect later or whatever. And I think that's important because people trust you then.
So here's a quick question for you, Dennis. So I always say hypothetical questions to my guests. Let's say all your staff, all your money, all your things are stripped away today and you're
Mm-hmm.
starting from scratch. How would you do it again? What were the steps that you might take and what would you avoid this time around?
I don't know if you can see the sheer anxiety roll over my face with that question, because I worry about that every day. I honestly, I told my wife the other day, I said, I just feel like I'm playing a big game of dress up. Like suddenly I'm here and I'm wearing this suit that maybe doesn't fit. And I know that's may not sound like a confident thing to say, but it's human. It's the reality check of what we got going on. Like sometimes you just arrive. Looking back on it, there's definitely some things I wouldn't have done, but I still think uh, the creation of business for me is getting out there and meeting people. I have, you know, geez, I'm trying to think how to answer that question. That's such an interesting one, because I feel like I arrived here in a good spot. So if I had nothing, I'm starting all over again, what would I do? The first thing I would do is I would go out and meet and try to meet the people that are most opportunistic in my business. And I would be selfish a little bit more at the beginning, right? But at the same time, I'd be thinking, well, they need help. So in my business, some of the best opportunities, as I call them, would be general contractors, people in real estate, as far as brokers or real estate attorneys. Um, Money is always good. So money always is something that's a key thing for people in architecture. If you don't have money, you're not really doing it. So I love the financial planners of the world, the people
Mm.
owning, and I would try to network in with those folks that are in your sphere. I think whatever your sphere of influence is super important, and you need to figure that out. When I first started, I sent out, I remember this, I sent out a blanket kind of email, and I would do Google search on location. This is cool. This is a good one. Okay, so I did a Google search on location, and I knew I wanted to meet general contractors. And my thought was, just like anything in the world, right? It's okay to be the rebound guy or the other woman. And I felt that at some point, a general contractor is going to have enough of their architect, or they're done with their architect, and it happens. And there's one day someone's going to say, "I'm done with Dennis. I don't want to deal with them." So I said, let's send out to all the general contractors that were in my geographical vicinity, because I wasn't national at that point. I was just kind of local. And I did a 30-mile kind of loop, I think Google does maybe, or something like that. And I looked them all up, and I made a list, and I took all the contacts of anybody that had a true website and an email address, because I felt like anyone who didn't have a website probably wasn't going to get what I was doing with a cold email. And I sent out emails, kind of a form letter, but I would try to customize it and make sure I at least put a little extra time in, figure out who the owner's name, if it was Summers Building This and Jim Summers, or et cetera, whoever it may be. And I started that way. And let's say I sent 100 of those, I probably got like 15 or 20 responses, which is pretty incredible.
Do
And
you
they led,
still
oh
have that form letter?
gosh, I don't think so. That's on a computer.
I was going to ask, maybe you could share that with the audience, because I know a lot of people. That's
Yeah.
the hardest part, is the procurement and the gusto and the guts to try to go out and get business, and that's where I think a lot of us fail.
Well, I think that the letter was, offering of services, which I think any of us can kind of do, right? Like, what is it that we're offering? What's our piece? How do we make your life easier? What are we willing to do too? Because at least
Hmm.
extra, I get a lot of, and you said it too, like, well, will you do this or will you do this? And yeah, we'll do that. We'll help you out. So I mean, I think the willingness to kind of work on anything. So I'm not sure what the examples are in each profession, but we all kind of probably have an idea in our head of what we want to do, what we don't want to do. And I think as you get more successful or more developed, sure, focus in on that. But at the beginning, we're not shy. We were designing a deck for the back of a house. I designed a beam to just take out a structural wall in a living room to connect open concept living room kitchen. And that one led to a really large, basically like a YMCA on steroids type project that we worked on,
Mm.
because I just liked us and said, "Oh, can you do other work?" We said, "Yeah, we can do a bunch of other stuff." So yeah, so I think that's important.
And then, okay, here's another question. I would assume you've had mentors in your life other than your father, especially business mentors. Who were they? What did you really look up to them for, and what did they teach you?
So I'd say my good friend Bob, one of my best friends still to this day, godfather to one of my kids too. Um, he, I was, like I said, I was doing the networking on my own, and he was someone I got introduced to actually via one of those letters. That's funny. So one of those form
Mm.
letters, a contractor said, "This guy over here, he sent me a letter. He's an architect, and he's trying to get work, and he's doing this." And he referred me over to my now friend Bob. And Bob said, "Well, I run this networking thing monthly, and it was called Greater Boston Advisors." And he said, "We have kind of seats, very similar to like that BNI kind of style, like work thing, but no fees. It was more casual, it was relaxed, but it got us together." And he showed me what it was, not just to refer business and to think of others and try to help, but he also helped me to learn a little bit more about, kind of having people to collaborate with or talk to or bounce ideas off of mistakes they've made. Because I mean, looking back, it's been 13 years on my own. I've made a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes I wouldn't make again. But those people that had been in business when I just started, I was maybe year one or one and a half when I'm starting to meet Bob. They had hundreds of years experience between the 20 of them in the group. And they had seen and done all the different things. It may not have been architecture, but it may have been, how do you hire this person? How do you maintain talent? How do you get health insurance? How do you, whatever it is, you know, where do you order your supplies from, or what?
Right.
Just funny, all the stuff that we don't know. And I think leaning on him, he showed me what it was to learn from other folks, because we all think we can kind of do it ourselves. And I think that was helpful. That was some interesting times, because that was back when it wasn't easy, right? It was tough going. The economy wasn't great, and we were all really kind of plugging along, trying to make it work. I look back in that group now, and it makes me a little bit sad. I still go to it. I'm not as good as going to it, more just because of travel and kids and stuff like that. But it's definitely dwindled because times are good. And I've always said to everyone, I'm like, don't forget when it's bad. And it just goes back to that same thing. Like, don't forget when it's bad, because I bet you any money, if we had a bit of a downturn, that group would hulk back up again. You'd see all 20, 25 people back in there trying to help each other. So, um, but yeah, so he's one of my biggest mentors. Outside of that, I think, you know, in a positive, negative way, a lot of the mentors I had in architecture itself were really what not to do. And I'm not trying
Mm.
to be mean or aggressive. They were great in certain ways, but they really just showed me how not to run a business. And I held on to that, and I made sure I didn't do that. And I made sure I made people feel appreciated. And I made sure like I said at the beginning, just keep going out and keep staying aggressive, in the sense that you're always working, always thinking of the next 6 months.
Now, how important is personal financial education, and how important is creating daily routines in your life that compound over time to eventually give you freedom? And the reason I ask that is, I like your work now for the next 6 months of your life, and ironically, 6 months from today is my birthday, so that was a good analogy. but but my life has always been like, I've never been a huge earner, but I've been extremely disciplined, right? And all the monies that I've made, I've put towards real estate investments and accumulated rental properties, and really just, basic principles of living on less than what you make, and taking that dollar and educating yourself on what can be done with it, right? As opposed to consuming it. How do you let it go out and make babies for you? Can you touch upon that concept a little bit, and maybe, shed some light on listeners that want to do that for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, definitely been fortunate in the fact that I have a business that creates revenue and can earn for us. I think one of the things I just touched on is savings. I really believe that's important. It's a key to giving you that flexibility to do what you need to do, or have that comfort. And I think one of the concepts is, I've always said zero. I have to keep X amount in my bank account. It's not the number zero, and everyone has to kind of figure out what it is, but figure out what your baseline number is just for living. And I think most financial advisors will probably tell you this as well. I don't think this is some magical mystery, but it's not as easy to do, because there's always something that you want to buy or something you want to do. Figure out what that zero is. Always have that as your baseline in your account. So, if you have to hit that big red button and all hell breaks loose and stuff isn't coming in, you have that cushion, so you actually feel comfortable. And realistically, it's never going to go to zero, right? Like, even if we have bad times, we're still going to make something.
Right.
Um, as far as the passive stuff goes, we've we've done income properties and purchased and tried to renovate and flip and do things like that. Um, I'm a little bit different. I find that I'm better at what I do as a professional versus trying to dabble into the other stuff. So they've never been unsuccessful, but they've never really been something like, "Ooh, I really want to do that again." So for me, I've really tried to make sure I save, I put investments aside, and then I just really try to pay off any debt I have. I think that's the biggest way to feel secure as a business owner.
And as far as Prudence, do you think 6 months of expenses, a year, year and a half, 2 years, what best suits your model and the way you look at your business?
For me, I'm really endeavoring to get to a year. I'd say we're probably, and if you think about it, I've been doing this. My mindset changed, like the gears in my head changed probably 12, 13 years ago. Um, I'm probably around 6 to 8 months, in that range. We were just talking about really kind of trying to pay down debt this year. This is a year where I want to pay down debt. I want to get comfortable. I'm a little bit anxious about what's going on. Um, as an architect, we're canaries in the cave. We're ahead of everybody. We're usually about 18 to 24 months ahead of, at least in the construction industry, of good or bad times coming, and it's super steady. So we're okay right now. But I'm concerned. I want to make sure I prepare for that kind of turn. And for me right now, I'm really trying to look at, debt reduction, trying to clear out any bills, trying to get rid of the payments, right? Those car payments that it's a car. I as much as everyone else gets to look at it and it's cool. I know a lot of people love cars. I'm fine with a car, but I hate it. I hate that I have to have a payment for it sometimes. So I'm really targeting that. I'm also targeting some other stuff for, like, office mortgage type things like that. We're really trying to hit those and pay them down. And quite honestly, the investments aren't doing so great. So I don't think it's a terrible time to try and do that.
Well, I think you have a real interesting perspective. Similar to me, is what people don't understand is principal pay down is you're alleviating risk, and
Mhm.
there's a lot. Everyone tries to chase return, right? Oh, I'm going to do this deal. It's going to make this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this, and you never make as much as you ever going to think you're going to make, because A, you have taxes. B, as you make more, so does your living expenses and all your, as we were talking about last night, right? All of the things that you love start
Yeah.
saying, oh, now I can afford it. Now let's
Yeah.
buy a $75,000 watch or whatever. All those things are not necessary, and
Yeah.
as much as we like them, I'm with you in the fact that, and I think it's important, that audience members realize this, is prudence is power. If you have optionality in your life and you have a fiscal cushion like you talk about at any level, whether that's $1,000, $2,000, $500,000, that gives you the ability to decide what you want to do with your future, as opposed to lead with desperation of, I have to do this. Can you
Right.
talk about that a little bit, and maybe how that's, focused on your life?
Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be times where it's really sexy to buy the, I don't know, a new car, or new shoes, or whatever it may be, or whatever kind of makes you happy. But um, sitting somewhere and hucking, that money that you would have hucked at something goofy that you'll kind of forget about in 6 months anyway, and tearing down some debt that you have. There's nothing more satisfying when you finally pay that thing off. So to me, that cash flow of reducing the bills, the monthly bills, are what really help me out and make me feel more comfortable. I hope I'm answering your question, what you're
Yeah,
at.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, what do you think? And this is putting you on the spot, obviously. But let's say I deputized you a real estate agent today, right? And you're new to the area, you're new to Arizona, let's say, and you have a family, you have children. How would you go out and procure business, knowing what you know in your profession today and knowing how people work? How would you go out and do it as a person new in the industry?
All right, so real estate agent then. So real estate agent, usually earlier on the scene, so to speak. So that's good, right? So I'm gonna see a lot of different things. So I would be looking at how I can leverage my clients again to help other people. So let's say I have a client and they're looking to, I don't know, buy a piece of land they want to build. That's a whole bunch of different things. Now I know I'm kind of jumping to the fact that I have the
Yeah.
client. I kind of we'll jump the fact that we've met someone that we know. I mean, everybody starts with their friends and family. So there's a family member who wants to do it. We'll jump to there. But now I've got someone who's like, okay, so he wants to buy a piece of land and he wants to build a home. What do we need? So we're going to need architect, going to need site civil engineer, going to need a builder, going to need obviously the real estate. Well, I'm the real estate agent, so never mind. So we don't need that. So we're good. Financing the land, they're going to have to come up with cash unless they do hard money, right? Um, so there's what, 4 or 5, 6 different professionals that I know I need in my back pocket. So my first question to that person who's, oh, excuse me, my first question to that person would be, do you have those professionals in your pocket? Do you have a team behind?
Mm.
So I would start with developing that team. I would start with meeting other people, not individuals, because everyone gets caught up in the individual, right? So I've got this one client. I'm excited. I got this one client. Or I could go over here and I could meet this one person who owns a business, one business owner. think of how many interactions a day that one business owner is going to have comparatively to your aunt that you talk to once at Thanksgiving. So I think getting that professional team around you and behind you and trusted, even if you're starting off, I don't think I know anybody that's going to say, you know what, that guy or that lady is a new real estate agent. She wants to do business with me. She doesn't have any opportunities, but he or she's going to really try. Oh, I don't want to deal with them. Most people are going to be excited. And quite honestly, just like you or I, if someone came up to me and wanted to chat with me tomorrow, I mean, you said yesterday, you want to chat about this? I said, okay, sure. People are inherently open to help you. So you're going to get this kind of mesh or this network behind you that you wouldn't have had. So again, meet as many people who own a business or in a place where they're going to meet more people. Those one-off clients are great, but that one client, you're going to do one transaction maybe every 5 years if you're lucky, maybe longer. But you could do a transaction with the right civil engineer, and you could do 25, 30 things a year. Who knows? And
Mm.
that would be my tip. And I think that's, you kind of extrapolate that and take it however you want with any real profession in the real estate industry. Just think a little bit about who you need to know and who you want in your corner when it kind of comes down to it all.
How important, and this is obviously a question I ask a lot, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. How important is it to understand where to meet people with money, how to meet people with money, and how to interact with them to actually give them value to where they value you, not as a person working for them or someone that is a potential equal that can assist them on their journey? Does that question make sense?
It's a, it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg dance though, right?
Right.
So how do you how do you get business before you have business? How do you kind of prove that you can do the business before you have the business? And a little bit of secret sauce in that. And you know what? At the beginning, I'll tell you a little lie, or tell you a little secret. I didn't know what the heck I was doing on my own, but I made people think I knew exactly what I was doing, and you know what I did at the end. But I got through it through sheer force and will. Um, I don't know exactly the secret sauce, and I think if someone knew that secret sauce, that's worth a lot of money. But yeah, surrounding yourself. I mean, I got into your activities, right? Who you're with, who you meet, where you're at. Um, I've done deals on a golf course. I've met people on soccer fields. So I frankly, I don't think there's a specific spot. I think opening yourself up, and it doesn't always have to be a business group. Maybe it's a church group, or maybe it's a industry night, or maybe it's a some sort of trade that trade association. But I think those are the ways to really get in and then understand the fabric of wherever it is that your neighborhood is or you're working in, and who's who, because there's always certain players and people that you need to know and interact with.
Mm. How important is marketing enthusiasm and making sure that you present yourself in like a professional light to the business king?
Yeah, so on the marketing end, image is so huge, right? How you, not even just on the internet, but how you present yourself and how you dress. And I think we talked about that, and being clean cut, and even for instance, my office, and the staff thinks I'm crazy, but like, I want it to look like a magazine. I understand we're working, but I need it to look clean. I need it to look like an architect's office. And I think those things are important just as much as the online presence and how you present yourself. I think people really need to be careful on the internet as far as what their handle and how they kind of show themselves. For me, like, I don't want to have a Happy Valentine's Day post on my on my Instagram or whatever. We're going to post a picture of work that we've done, or a professional level of piece. It may be different for whatever industry you may be in, but I think it's really important to think about what that message is and what you're trying to convey. We want to be with higher end clients. We want to be with people who enjoy high design and want to actually hire and use our services. So that's something I'm trying to always capture, which isn't always easy, right?
What's something that you've learned that's a differentiator? Because I would assume as an architect or as a real estate agent or a builder,
Hmm.
what makes you different than everyone else, right? That's always a circuitous question that may not be asked directly, but is definitely thought about by a potential client. How would you respond to that question?
So you're saying why do people buy you, basically, right?
Exactly. Just in general, and I'm not just saying you, but I'm saying as a individual or as a business in general.
Yeah. So not for me, but I think you have to find that niche that you fit in. I know I said don't be specific and don't be so finite, but I think with yourself and how you operate, you need to be a little more specific. So for me, I'm much more of a casual person. I'm not super formal. I'm not uptight. I'll be honest. My profession, there's a lot of great people, but there's a lot of people that are very I'm not sure how to say the word, but stuffy or uptight, and I don't always get along with all of my colleagues, and that's okay. But I like to be more of that normal architect that we can joke around, we can talk through a project, we can make decisions together. It's not just about my opinion and my design, and it's about kind of the collaborative piece of it all. So I think everybody needs to find their business personality, as much as you need to find your regular personality. And for the most part, if you stay true to yourself, I mean, I'm the same person I am at work as I am outside of work, with my friends. And I think people will inherently work with my company or with me because they enjoy actually doing it, because they've got to hire an architect. Could be me, could be somebody else. Maybe I'm not that style, but I would say stay true to it. And I think that'll really help you as well. And you'll be a lot more comfortable in front of clients, in front of people.
You hit on something really interesting earlier on. You talked about your father and how he worked really hard, but not
Yeah,
necessarily as smart as he could have. What are
right.
some ways people could work smarter as opposed to working really hard in their business and for their future?
Yeah. So again, this goes to starting to focus, and even I'm trying to recalibrate a little bit. It's 13 years in, but I'm still recalibrating. Working hard is great, but not having that focused on what is kind of going to bring you the best dividends, or what's going to bring you back the right amount of stuff. Or sometimes it's people really trying to do too much themselves, and I'm a victim of that too. I've just finally hired a person to help with some of the pieces of business that I was in, and I kind of had a stranglehold on. And you know what? Looking back on it now, it's only been a couple months, but it's been a breath of fresh air. And the person who took over literally just talked to me this morning. We were going over stuff. He goes, "I don't know how you were doing all this and running the business." I said, "You know what? I don't know either. I don't know what I was doing." So that's a work harder, work smarter thing, and I'm a victim of it too. So you have to kind of take a little bit more of a global look. What are you good at? And I know what I'm good at now, but what are you good at, and what is it that you should be focusing on? And then figure out your support system around you. And sometimes that means hiring somebody, sometimes that means asking for help, or sometimes that means maybe you shouldn't be working on that project. Maybe you shouldn't be working in new construction. Maybe you're better off at, you know, selling existing homes, or whatever it is. I'm trying to kind of relate it to
Mhm.
whoever. For you, I know you really like high-end residential and new construction. So if I said to you, would you like to do a really small addition? You'd probably say, you know what, I appreciate it, but it doesn't really fit because it's not gonna work for me. It's more of that work smarter, work harder thing, right?
Well, what's ironic about that? I was having this conversation the other day with a good friend of mine, and what brings me a lot of joy is like renting places for like 3, 4, 5,000 a month.
Right.
And it
Yeah.
makes no logical sense. But the reason I love it so much is A, I can educate people on it. B, it's how I made a lot of my money and a lot of volume was buying places, living in them, fixing them up, and renting them in perpetuity and never selling them. And it's
But
it's really interesting. No, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
interrupt you. To me, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but the perfect opportunity, right? So what's going to happen with that person who's renting right now? I'm sure you're going to have a conversation about, well, why you're renting. Doesn't it make sense to buy? And you're just creating another opportunity lead for yourself too down the road if you do a great job with that, or even if you just have more of an educational conversation and how to.
Yeah. And that to me is the most fulfilling, right? Like I had a lady that stopped by one of my rentals yesterday and we had like a 35-minute conversation. And
Mhm.
and and, and she was an attorney, ironically enough, and she was talking about, oh, I want to buy a house and I'm having issues. What do I need to do? How would you do it? And she was putting a substantial amount of money down, and I was trying to educate her on you got to look at money as a balance wheel. And cash going into recession is highly valuable. It's much more valuable than having a depreciating asset like your house in this time paid off free and clear. You have to have liquidity to pay for yourself in the future. And so we were talking about how that works, and literally after that conversation, she said, I learned more than you that I did in college when it came to
Right.
personal finance classes. And I said, well, I'm glad to be of help. But to me, that's what we're put on this earth to do is you have a skill, I have a skill, those listening in have certain skills. And if you know something that you've garnered success from, I almost think it's your duty as a human being to help educate others to give them that same success. What are
Yep.
your feelings on that? And what are some of the things that you've done in the past to assist those that may not know what it is that you do?
Yeah, and I think another thing I always say is we're not competition. We're all colleagues. Like I think there's plenty of stuff out there, right? So we can all, not the kumbaya song here, but we can all help each other. I mean, we can
Mm-hmm.
help one another get better, and I really believe it's more of a rising tide versus anything else. So yeah, I've helped mentor people. I've helped, what people call my competition, and I'm sure they've helped me back with conversations and dinner and just kind of shooting the fat, chewing the fat about what it is that we're doing. So I think it's always great to help.
In summation, is there one thing that would be a takeaway of what we talked about today that you'd like the audience to take home with them?
Um, Man, I feel like I said it a few times, but everything you do now is 6 months from now, and every person you meet and everything you do is an opportunity. And the more you get outside and the more you meet people and do different things, it's only going to help you and your business and everything else that you're trying to grow. So um, don't be afraid to go take some risks. Don't be afraid to say something to someone who you're nervous about. And everybody, we're all the same. We're just people. So um, I've really found that the more people I meet, successful, unsuccessful, wealthy, in between, whatever, we all have the same things, same desires, same issues, same stuff. So it's a pretty common thread.
Is there a quote that resonated with you in your life that you want to share with the audience?
Oh man, I wish. Um, I'm not a quote guy, like I get an email from one contractor and he always has a new quote each morning in his signature and it always cracks. None really popped to mind. Um, you got any quotes? You a quote guy?
I got it. Well, I wrote a book in 2017. So I started it off with quotes, and obviously it's about relationships and dating, but that relationships and dating is business. I don't care what anyone says. All the
Yep.
things that we can relate to our personal life, we can relate to our professional life. Henry David Thoreau had a really good quote. He said, launch yourself on every wave, find your eternity in each moment. And what I like about that quote is it really relates to the fact that what we're doing right now is the most important thing in our life, whatever that is, right? Spending time with your wife, seeing your kids, talking and learning from someone right now. And it's taking the joy of the moment of us, getting together and taking this time and learning from one another that is the most important thing in your life. And so, I really appreciate you taking the time on such short notice because to me, selfishly, I love doing this for a lot of people, but I love these interviews because I take copious notes and learn a lot for myself. You know what I mean? So, with that being said, is there a best way for people to follow you, to do business with you? What's the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do have a quote for you. I just remembered. It's Elon Musk, and he was asked. He said the interviewer said, "What type of encouragement would you give someone trying to start their own business?" And he said, "If you need encouragement, you shouldn't start your own business." And I thought that was excellent because you got to be hungry. So best way to contact us, obviously website. It's Dennis Colwell Architects. The website itself is dc-architect.com. I'm sure if you Google search Dennis and Architect, you'll find us as well. We're on Instagram, LinkedIn, obviously, and anything else like that. So we'd be happy to help you out if you need anything. A lot of times it might just be a question. A phone call is always free. So sometimes you'll be in a sticky situation and you just need some code questions answered, or maybe you got a client you're not sure about. we're happy to do initial consults for free, and we'd be happy to meet with you, chat with you, and get to know you a bit more. So hopefully that helps.
Hey, yeah, no, this was great. And thank you again for taking an hour out of your day, Dennis. And we really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
See you guys. Take care.
Yeah.